Hey, what's up, guys? So today I'm going to be talking about TCP and UDP and explaining how TCP exactly works and how UDP works and show you the differences between both of them. So starting off with TCP, um, really TCP, its special mechanism is that it has a three-way handshake mechanism, which establishes a connection with the server and the client, which ensures that the data is always being sent in an ordered manner. So this is why we know that TCP is generally a very reliable way of sending data. It always ensures that the receiver, the server, is always going to get the data in an ordered manner. Now, when it comes to speed, because of this three-way handshake that's being established and the constant acknowledgments that the server needs to send to the client, it's generally much slower than UDP. So that's something to take into account for one of the differences between both protocols. So the TCP protocol ensures that everything happens correctly, but that doesn't mean that things don't go incorrectly. Unfortunately, packets will be lost or packets will be corrupted, but the TCP protocol will ensure to resend everything that the server deems as corrupted or not received. So I won't be going too much into detail about how the header looks like, but generally the header length for TCP is much bigger, with having 20 bits and 40 optional bits. So when you compare it to the UDP, it only has 8 bits. So you can kind of tell that TCP is heavier weight, which again plays into the fact that it's a bit slower than UDP. So again, I won't go too much into detail, but here you can have a visual representation of just on what orders of magnitude TCP is bigger compared to UDP. And again, keep in mind that there are 40 optional bits, so it could be up to 60 bits depending on what or how you use it. So going back to the TCP three-way handshake, the first step is the SYN phase, which is known as the synchronized sequence number phase, where we're basically telling the server, hey, we're probably going to start a connection, and it's also going to give the sequence number that the segment will start with, the segment that we're going to send eventually. So this is just going to be a random given number. So now looking at step number 2, we have the SYN ACK phase, which is basically going to set the signal bits, which is one of the many fields inside the TCP header. Basically, it's just going to go ahead and say, for the acknowledgement phase at least, it's going to go ahead and say, hey, I've successfully received your connection request. And the SYN part is basically saying, hey, I'm expecting this number for the segment that is going to be sent in the future. Now, we finally have the third phase, which is kind of closing the three-way handshake and saying, okay, well, I've received your connection request to me, and that sends it back to the server. And at that point, you've established your connection, and this is when you can go ahead and start sending your data. The actual data will start flowing at that point. We want very safe and sequential data, which means, after each and every segment, the server needs to acknowledge that it received it and tell the client, okay, I want this one now. If there was a packet that was lost or corrupted, the server would need to inform the client, hey, I need this one back because this one was corrupted or I never even received it in the first place. Now, because of the safety that comes with TCP, it's generally used for stuff that requires that needed safety and guarantee that the data will all come in order. For example, file transfers or bank transactions or phone numbers. For example, if you don't go ahead and send every single number in the phone number, you're not going to be calling the right person. So you need every single number. You would want to use something that's safe like TCP. All right, so let's start talking about user datagram protocol, or otherwise known as UDP. It is much simpler and way more lightweight, so it should hopefully be easier than learning TCP. So first of all, you can kind of notice right away there's no three-way handshake at all, which makes it much faster. And like I've shown before, the header is only 8 bits long, which makes it way more lightweight and way faster when it comes to transferring data. So UDP is super fast, but it's also a double-edged sword. It's super fast, but there's no guarantee that the data will ever come. What I mean by this is during TCP, if the packet wasn't sent correctly, the server will go ahead and ask for it again. Well, there's none of that when it comes to UDP. If you lose some packets, then it's fine. All we care about is fast transmission. Now, because of this, this protocol is super, super great when it comes to stuff that requires fast packets. For example, voice call, so voice over IP. We use UDP because we don't really generally care if we lose some packets, right? So sometimes you're talking with your friend and there's a bit of lag. It's annoying, sure, but it's not crucial. It's not going to ruin your experience, especially if it's just a few packets being lost. So it's the same concept when it comes to video streaming. Again, if you're streaming, you need fast packets. You need UDP because if there's any, if you use TCP, it's just going to be too slow and there's going to be way too much lag. But again, if you lose a few packets when it comes to UDP, it's not that big of a deal. You'll have a few buffering, which is annoying again, but not the biggest deal in the world. So that's kind of it for UDP. To be honest, there's not much to add. If you want to go ahead and go more in depth about how it works, you'd want to go ahead and look at the header and what every single section in the header does, which I might make a video on in the future. But for now, that's about it. I hope this video helped you out to understand the differences between UDP and TCP, to understand TCP and UDP by themselves. If it did, please leave a like, comment on anything that you found interesting or to improve on, and I'll see you in the next video.